The Dallas Police Department compiled this list of officers and also an FBI man who were present at Oswald's arrest. This list is not complete. I can say at least two people more were there that aren't on this list, but this is the list provided, the list of names provided by the Dallas Police Department of officers or personnel present at the arrest of Oswald. And looking at this document here, I just noticed that the arrest time for Oswald has been altered on this document. It says 1:40, but you can see underneath it that there was some other time. It looks like the last number is an 8 or a 9, but I'm not sure. And you can tell that this was very deliberately done. That is, the original was typed up, and then it was taken out of the typewriter and erased and put back in the typewriter and retyped as 1:40 p.m. You can tell that because the 1:40 is not aligned perfectly with the PM. You can look at the time underneath that where we don't have these issues. The 11:21 relative to the AM is higher than the 1:40 is relative to the PM. So it's a little, when they put it back in the typewriter, they had it a little lower than it originally was, but it looks like they took care to make it look as though they didn't have it lower, because it's very close. I just thought I'd mention that because I noticed it here. So, keeping that list in mind, we go now to the radio traffic during the time of the library event, which I'm saying was staged on the radio partially, though I do think lots of officers did go there. But anyway, the highlighted area there covers the time of the library event between when C.T. Walker kicks it off and when Captain Westbrook comes on to end it. And the only transmission from any one of the named officers that were present at Oswald's arrest, the only one is the one in green there during this period, and that comes from Ray Hawkins. But if we go look at the photography taken at Oswald's arrest, we cannot prove that Ray Hawkins was inside the theater when Oswald was arrested. And here's the first photograph outside showing the officers bringing Oswald out, and you can't see Ray Hawkins being present. And in fact, the first time we see Ray Hawkins, and I'm not going to get into proving that this is Hawkins, that would take too long. You take my word for it. That has to be Ray Hawkins. If Ray Hawkins was there, that has to be him, because he said he went to the car and ahead of the people bringing Oswald out. Well, we see Oswald coming out, but in the foreground, in the top picture here, that's Hawkins already at the car. And then the reason I can identify him is the picture underneath, where he's still standing at the car. So what I'm getting at here is that the transmission made by Hawkins in the library radio traffic could very well have been Hawkins inside that car, and it doesn't prove that he was at the library or even not at the Texas Theater. Ray Hawkins could have been sitting in the car they put Oswald into when he called in this radio transmission pretending that he was at the library. So what I'm saying is that the radio traffic does not prove that a single one of the officers present at Oswald's arrest was at the library. Because even if Hawkins wasn't at the library, that takes him out of there, and none of the others are even on the radio. So the thesis here, if that's the right word, is that the library event is happening at the same time as Oswald's arrest, that the library event was intended as a diversion to get all of the police officers who aren't in the loop over to the library so that Oswald can be arrested at the Texas Theater without officers present who aren't in on the joke, as it were. And the C.T. Walker transmission where he's got his tires squealing and he's at the library and he's going to run around back and all that, that's what's in blue there. And there's no proof that when he made that radio transmission that he was at the library. He could have been at the Texas Theater already when he made that transmission, and that's what I think happened, because there's nobody who, they weren't asked, of course, they weren't interrogated on this point, but no officer present at the library can says that C.T. Walker was at the library. We know that Sergeant Owens was at the library, and we hear on the radio that some of these people are there, but there's nothing that indicates that any of these officers even saw C.T. Walker there. In fact, the dispatcher says C.T. Walker is supposed to be there, but we have no evidence of it, other than C.T. Walker's own transmission, which could have been made at the Texas Theater. And then at the end of the library event, Captain Westbrook, in the first red rectangle there, gets on the radio and acts like he's at the library, but he's asking who's in charge here on the radio, so he could be at the Texas Theater, just having come out of the Texas Theater after Oswald's arrest. And then C.T. Walker, in the next blue rectangle there, he gets on after the library event is over, and he could very well be in the squad car that has arrested Oswald, or he probably would have had enough time if they had wanted him to get into a different car. He would have had time after the arrest to get out of that car and get into another one. So there's no evidence to prove, other than what the officers themselves said, that these officers present at Oswald's arrest were present at the library event, and so there's nothing to disprove this idea that the library event was a diversion, and it occurred at the same time as Oswald's arrest at the Texas Theater. Now, conveniently, we have television film taken at the library. The story is from C.T. Walker that when he heard about the Tippit shooting, he was at the Texas School Book Depository, and he got into his APB car, and a news photographer got in with him, and they went to Oak Cliff. So C.T. Walker has a photographer with him. And this is from the film. And this is the first thing we see. There's a police officer at this tree. He becomes visible there. I assume it's a police officer. There's a person at the tree in front of the library. And then we have a shot of a police car driving by. Apparently it doesn't stop because it's still going fast when it passes the camera. And then we have this APB car, which presumably is Walker's car. And in the background there's a police officer with light pants. He's not a Dallas City cop. He's probably a constable. They talk about constables being present. So we have one police officer here and one police car, probably two. He probably has his own car. And then we have photography, apparently, of C.T. Walker running around the back. And that's it. That's all the photography we have of the library event. So what was this news photographer doing all this time? Why does he get this meager footage showing two police officers and no suspects when the story is that everybody went over there? Warren Reynolds said all the cops left where he was and they all went to the library. Sergeant Owens on the radio says we're all over here. So why does the photographer not capture any of the action? Why does this look like somebody's garage home movie that they created to pretend that there was an arrest going on? This is not credible. This cannot be a news photographer's record of the event as described. This is something that was taken before the event happened so that it would prove, in quotes, that C.T. Walker was there. So what I'm saying is that the library event was a diversion that happened at the same time as Oswald's arrest, and this was part of a preconceived plan to make it seem as though Oswald was arrested at 1:52, when actually he was arrested at 1:35. And the reason I know of for doing this, and they may have had other reasons, but the reason I know of is that it apparently proves that Officer James H. Taylor was not at Oswald's arrest. He was just hanging out at Parkland Hospital, because the photography shows him there at the time of Oswald's arrest according to the radio, but not according to the 1:35 time. If it happened at 1:35, then Taylor could have been in both places, because it's not the same time. So they may have had other reasons. Maybe they were providing other alibis that I don't know about. All right, I guess that finishes part 2.